In the autumn of 1700, in the grand and somber Escorial Palace, majestic like the entire Spanish monarchy and gloomy as a tomb, the last king of Spain, Charles II of Habsburg, was slowly dying. He was 38 years old. The king had already lost his hair, and he had almost no teeth left. He was half blind. It's worth mentioning that the king's appearance had frightened people ever since his birth. The list of Charles's ailments was astonishing. Until the age of 6, due to muscle weakness, he couldn't walk. He suffered from measles and chickenpox. He had smallpox at 11. He was constantly catching colds. He suffered from epileptic seizures and fits of rage. Because of his deformed jaw and long tongue, he had trouble eating and only learned to speak clearly at the age of 10. He had heart and kidney problems, and his constant diarrhea, vomiting, and anorexia were most likely symptoms of chronic enterocolitis and tuberculosis. People called the king bewitched. Priests treated him with exorcism sessions. Charles could not have children. After his death, the Spanish throne was left vacant, and great upheaval and chaos in Europe were approaching. In this episode of Voss, we will talk about the Habsburgs, who came up with a cunning plan to gain dominance in Europe, but ended up suffering from it themselves. And also about what it cost the world, how the Zero World War ended, and probably the most famous royal deformity. But before that, let us remind you, subscribe to our channel if you haven't already, and give this video a like. The first Habsburgs, Lancelin and his son Radbot, the founder of the Habsburg Count Dynasty, were ordinary nobles, vassals of the emperors of the Holy Roman Empire. At that time, the Habsburgs did not possess significant land holdings and lived mainly off income from customs duties. The first winning strategy chosen by these nobles and their descendants was to take part in the numerous wars for the crown of the Holy Roman Empire. They were fortunate to end up on the side of the victors, and eventually, they were rewarded with rich landholdings in Alsace. In the 12th and 13th centuries, the Habsburgs formed family ties with their noble neighbors, the Landsbergs, Fuhlendorfs, Homburgs, Zaringens, and Kyburgs, and inherited their ancestral wealth. Because of this, the Habsburgs were nicknamed the Survivors. It was the ambitious and ruthless Rudolf I of Habsburg who first realized that a successful marriage was the key not only to wealth, but also to power. He was an attractive man, standing nearly 2 meters tall. His striking appearance was marred only by an overly long nose, which, as the jokers teased, Rudolf could use to block anyone's path. His marriage to Gertrude of Hohenberg, heiress to a wealthy county in central Swabia, made Habsburg the most powerful ruler in southwestern Germany. This marriage produced 11 children, 9 of whom lived to adulthood. The princes of the Holy Roman Empire elected Count Rudolf of Habsburg as King of Germany. This happened thanks to the support of his candidacy by the influential Burgrave of Nuremberg and the Dukes of Bavaria and Saxe-Wittenberg, to whom Rudolf had prudently married off his daughters. Rudolf lived to the age of 73. At 66, he married for the second time and ruled with an iron hand. He ensured peace in the empire by destroying robber strongholds in the Rhine Valley. In the battle near Suchkruti, Rudolf defeated his main rival for the imperial crown, the Czech king Ottokar II, adding Austria to the hereditary lands of the Habsburgs. Rudolf's son, Albert I, was described by contemporaries as a miser who gave not a penny to the empire, only to his own descendants. Albert was the father of at least 21 children, 11 of whom survived to adulthood and made advantageous marriages with members of royal and princely houses. It was with Albert that what would later be called the Habsburg jaw was first reliably recorded. An excessively developed lower part of the face and a pathological bite. But more on that a bit later. Over the next 200 years, the prolific Habsburgs entangled Europe in marital bonds and, in their quest to become more noble, planted a time bomb under the genealogy of their descendants. Hard times came. Worn out by hunger, wars, and plague, people awaited the coming judgment day and a mighty savior, an emperor named Friedrich, who, according to Christian preachers, was supposed to save the world. The prophecies came true. In 1452, Frederick III of Habsburg became the emperor of the Holy Roman Empire. He was a tall and handsome man with long blonde hair and remarkable physical strength, inherited from his mother, Symburgis of Masovia, who could drive a nail into an oak board with her fist. The marriage of Frederick's son, the future Emperor Maximilian I, to Mary of Burgundy brought Franche-Comté, Red Hill, Flanders, Brabant, Hainaut, Namur, Holland, Zeeland, and Luxembourg into the Habsburgs' possessions. This propelled the dynasty to the forefront of European politics and gave rise to the famous Habsburg family motto, "Let others wage war, you, happy Austria, marry." And here's another point where things went wrong. In 1496, Maximilian's son, Philip I, nicknamed the Handsome, married the Spanish infanta known as Joanna the Mad. Even in her youth, Joanna already showed signs of a severe mental illness. After Philip's death, the woman embarked on a long journey across the country with his body and, waiting for her husband to be resurrected, refused to let him be buried. 6 of their children survived to adulthood and contributed mental disorders to the genetic collection of their descendants. Philip and Juana's son, Emperor Charles V of Habsburg, who called himself the Emperor of the Christian world, was a very sick man. His jaws were already severely deformed, with the upper not aligning with the lower. Once, upon seeing him, a witty Spanish peasant exclaimed, "Your Majesty, close your mouth. The flies in this country are very bold." Charles was married to his cousin Isabella of Portugal, who also had frail health. Of their 8 children, only 3 survived to adulthood. At the end of his life, Charles was tormented by a hereditary mental illness, which led him to abdicate the throne in favor of his brother Ferdinand I. The marriage policy that brought the Habsburgs to the height of power ultimately became their downfall. Due to the lack of suitable marriage prospects and the fear of passing power to an outside dynasty, the Spanish and Austrian branches kept intermarrying in every generation. Out of the 73 marriages contracted between members of the 2 branches from 1450 to 1750, 4 united uncles with their nieces, and 11 were between first cousins. In another 4 cases, the spouses were related as cousins once removed, and in 8 cases, they were third cousins. The church forbade marriage up to the 4th degree of kinship. Therefore, each such union required a special dispensation from the Pope. But you can't go against the laws of nature. The Habsburg jaw, which is clearly visible in portraits of both the women and men of the dynasty, became increasingly pronounced. The lower jaw jutted out more and more, while the upper jaw became less and less developed. To date, scientists have reliably established that this is the result of endogamy, that is, repeated inbreeding. The most powerful monarch of his time, Philip II of Spain, King of Spain, Portugal, Naples, and Sicily, Duke of the Netherlands, and ruler of all overseas colonies, suffered seriously from the consequences of dynastic policy. His son and heir, Prince Carlos, was born with a physical deformity, as well as mental and emotional disorders. After unsuccessful attempts to cure the ailing prince by placing a mummified saint in his bed, the young man was isolated from society. 2 of his 4 grandparents were children of Joanna the Mad, and his mother was his third cousin. But this case taught Philip nothing. The king's 4th wife was his own niece, her mother was Philip's sister, and at the same time his first cousin once removed, as her father was his cousin, Anna of Austria. Of their 5 children, only Philip III survived to adulthood, and he became the King of Spain. Because of inbreeding in the dynasty, not only did the Habsburg jaw become more pronounced, but the number of cases of mental disorders, epilepsy, and child mortality also increased. Of the 34 children born to the Spanish royal family between 1527 and 1661, 10 did not live even a year, and 17 did not reach the age of 10. Incest destroyed not only the Habsburgs, but also other dynasties connected to them. The last Polish king from the Jagiellonian dynasty, Sigismund II Augustus, could have had children, but his marriages to the daughters of Emperor Ferdinand I Habsburg, Elizabeth, and Catherine, turned out to be childless. Thus, the Jagiellonian dynasty died out. In the end, the global ambitions for power of the Habsburgs were shattered by the physical and mental health of the monarchs. In 1640, Portugal was lost, and in 1648, the Netherlands. Let's return to King Charles II of Spain, with whom we began this episode. On November 1st, 1700, he died. The autopsy of the late monarch revealed a very small heart, destroyed lungs, a purulent and necrotic intestine, 3 large stones in his only kidney, a single testicle black as coal, and hydrocephalus. It is likely that his body was neither male nor female, with sexual organs of an intermediate type. The reasons were obvious. While an average person in the 5th generation has 32 ancestors, Charles II had only 10, and 8 of them descended from the Mad Queen Joanna. His inbreeding coefficient, that is, the degree of mating between closely related individuals, exceeded the level typically found in children born from incest between a brother and sister. So, the closest contender for the Spanish throne turned out to be not a Habsburg, but the 17-year-old grandson of the French King Louis XIV of Bourbon, Philip V of Anjou. The French arrived in Madrid and took control of the kingdom. In his excitement, on February 1, 1701, Louis XIV made a strategic mistake. He instructed the Paris Parliament to grant the new King of Spain the right to inherit the French crown. He who holds both the crowns of France and Spain at the same time will be able to bend Europe to his will, warned the old adversary of Louis XIV, King William III of England. On July 15, 1702, England, the Netherlands, and the Holy Roman Empire of the Habsburgs, wishing to divide the Spanish inheritance among themselves, declared war on France and put forward as their candidate for the Spanish throne the last male line descendant of the Habsburgs, Charles VI of Austria. Soon after, they were joined by Denmark, Prussia, the electors of Trier, Mainz, and Hanover, another dozen less significant German princes, as well as Portugal and Savoy. On the side of France stood Bavaria and Mantua. Historians have called the War of the Spanish Succession the Zero World War, since it encompassed not only the territories of Europe but also the Americas, and claimed at least 500,000 lives. Do you have anything to add about this war? Feel free to share in the comments. The peace treaty stipulated that, due to the great danger posed to the freedom and security of all Europe by the overly close connection between the kingdoms of Spain and France, the same person must never be king of both kingdoms. Philip V of Bourbon renounced his rights to the French crown and became the King of Spain, where the Bourbons, though with interruptions, still rule to this day. Austria received a large part of the Spanish Netherlands. But the biggest winner was Britain, which gained the strategic Mediterranean ports of Gibraltar and Minorca, as well as rights to trade in Spanish America. It became the world's leading naval power. The last of the Habsburgs, Emperor Charles VI, died on October 20, 1740, leaving the remnants of the empire to his daughter Maria Theresa and her husband, Francis Stephen, Duke of Lorraine. Their 16 children and subsequent descendants were known as the Habsburg Lorraines and ruled the Holy Roman Empire, and later Austria-Hungary, until 1918. As of 2024, the head of this dynasty's house is Karl Habsburg Lorraine, a politician and journalist. He is over 60. Karl is lucky, his chin, it seems, is thriving.